Okay. Item 4, 2019-070, zoning amendment ordinance amendment.
All right,
Take it away.
I do not have a PowerPoint because this is all words and that'd just be a dry PowerPoint. This is project 2019-070, an amendment to chapter 17.44, revising the required setbacks for the business park zone. For some background, on September 10th, 2019, the Board of Supervisors instructed the Planning Department to process an amendment to revise the M4 zone setback requirements to be more consistent with other industrial zones. Chapter 17.44 of the Calaveras County Code establishes the provisions of the business park zone, also known as M4. Section 17.44.070, titled Site Development Standards, contains the setbacks for structures. The M4 zone has separate setback requirements for perimeter and interior lot lines in business park developments. The perimeter setback is 30 feet, which applies to all property lines on the perimeter of projects, be they front, side, or rear lot lines. The setbacks in the interior of projects vary in size. The interior side and rear setbacks are 20 feet, which is 10 feet less than the perimeter requirement, while the interior front setbacks is 50 feet, which is 20 feet more than the perimeter setback. The M1 and M2 zones have a front setback of 30 feet or 60 feet from the center line of road, whichever is greater. In order to make the M4 interior front setback more consistent with the perimeter setback as well as the setbacks in other industrial zones, the proposed change to section 17.44.070 H2A is as follows. Front 30 feet from the property line or 60 feet from the center line of the road of right-of-way or easement, whichever distance is greater. The perimeter setback requirement will remain in place. This change to the interior front setback will allow for more flexibility for property owners to develop the M4 zone parcels and will not alter the permitted uses or the intensity or scope of use. CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3 exempts actions that can be seen with certainty that there are no possibility that the activity in question may have a significant effect on the environment. It is staff's assertion that the 30-foot setback currently exists in the perimeter of business parks as a buffer for development in differing zones, and that establishing the same setback for parcel lines bordering the same zone will not have a negative effect. This amendment to the setback requirement does not change permitted uses, performance standards, or the allowed density or intensity of use in the M4 zone, and as such qualifies to be exempt under this CEQA provision. As such, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to recommend that the Board of Supervisors find that this proposed ordinance is exempt from CEQA and to adopt the said ordinance.
I may be alone in my ignorance here, but I still don't understand what the difference is between an interior front setback and a perimeter front setback.
So within the M4 zoning district, the idea behind it is for a business park, which will have multiple lots in it. And so if it's consisting of, be it even one lot, then the entire thing would be an exterior boundary line. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 or more lots all connected together, only those lot lines that are adjacent to other zoning districts that aren't M4 would be considered an exterior boundary.
So wait a minute. Okay, so perimeter front setback only applies to ones that are adjacent to other properties, or
to other zoned
other
properties.
zones?
So if it's not zoned M4, you're on a perimeter.
Yeah, you're on a perimeter. Okay, so it's the perimeter of this zone, not the perimeter of the building or the property.
Correct. It's the project as a whole. The M4 zoning area, the perimeter of that would have a 30-foot setback.
Well, that helps me consider it. Thank you. Now, then how does taking the action that's recommended not change the allowed intensity of use in the zone? And you're permitting a building to be bigger. The building is used to conduct some sort of business or, industry or whatever, warehouse or whatever.
Right.
How does providing for a bigger building not increase the intensity of use?
Well, most projects, they're limited in scope by landscaping and parking and all these extra site development requirements that exist in the zone. And all those are allowed in those setbacks, regardless of whether your setback be 30 feet or 50 feet. Changing the setback requirement allows more flexibility to site your structures within that area, but your requirement of all this extensive parking and landscaping that is usually your limiting factor in how much you can build out isn't changing. And so the thought is that being able to move structures around on a property, having more flexibility in that is not
But you're not really
increasing your intensity.
moving structures around necessarily, you're permitting structures to be larger, yeah?
I think what our analysis sort of came up with was that typically what's in that setback is the parking area. And so if someone were to move the building closer, you're going to have to move that parking elsewhere. If you're going to increase the size of the building, you have to increase the amount of parking. And so you're not really going to get to that point where you can increase the amount of building space without increasing the parking area, which typically goes in the setback anyway. And so with a 50-foot setback, what you're going to see is 50 feet of parking or more. And with this, you might see the building up close, but that parking is going to go somewhere else.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Is there any requirement for a finding that either allowed density or intensity of use will not be changed?
Well,
That's not a specific finding that's necessary. The finding in CEQA is that,
won't have an effect on the environment.
right, it can be seen with certainty that the proposed project, here this rezone, would not have a significant effect on the environment.
Okay, and what we're talking about here is the interior area of an M4 zone.
Right.
It's already zoned industrial. It's going to be covered with buildings or asphalt, or landscaping or something.
Right.
Why don't we just not worry about intensity and density, because those aren't required findings, and just say it won't have a significant effect on the environment because it's in the middle of an M4 zone?
That certainly makes more sense to me.
I think
That's certainly up to the commission to make that finding if that's what you feel more comfortable with.
the
I can-
density is clear. It's not going to change the density. And it's not going to change the use. Intensity depends on how you see it, as if you see it as a more intense use or if it's strictly a matter of quantity.
So why get into that thicket when you don't have to? Because the ultimate question is, does it have the real potential to have an impact on the environment? That's the question. And I don't see how it does.
Yeah, I think the reason for that statement was just simply to try to describe how we felt it did not have. And obviously, Commissioner Ladders, that wasn't clear to you that that was the case. And maybe we didn't do quite good enough job of explaining that. But I would agree with Commissioner Wooster that, yeah, we're talking about the interior of a business park zone, industrial zone. I think probably what we were looking at back in whenever this was created in the 70s, thinking of these campus-like settings of business parks in Silicon Valley, where you have lots of grass and landscaping. Well, that's not happened here in Calaveras County. And I think at this point in time, we probably don't want to see 50 feet of grass and landscaping due to water consumption concerns. And the reality in most cases would be that where we have had property developed in the M4 zone, which is very little actually, that space has been used by parking lots. So we're not going to see any
Right.
Not
much
significant,
practical
yeah,
effect.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, on the resolution under the evidence of finding number 2, just want to strike that last sentence, it's probably fine, or if you want to modify that sentence, that probably...
It's in
I've got
evidence
some-
of one, too.
I've got some language I can suggest.
Oh, good.
Okay, the last sentence could read, amending the minimum front setback to 30 feet for all lots in the M4 zone for other than perimeter boundaries, within the business park zone does not change any permitted uses or performance standards or otherwise have any significant effect on the environment.
Well, it does modify the performance standard, since a setback is a part of the performance standards. But other than that,
You may well be right about that.
I have no angst about any of this,
So it
really.
would just be, does not change any permitted uses or otherwise have any significant effect on the environment.
That sure makes me more comfortable.
Yeah.
And a similar change to the evidence under number 2, since it has density and intensity too. Just take out density and intensity, or take out intensity?
I would
No,
take both
I think
out.
it's fine there.
Well, still has my question then.
No, but it's different. It says the general nature, location, density, and intensity of the M4 zone remains unchanged. I think that is a true statement.
I think you're correct about that.
Okay.
Did you get that, Scott, his modification?
I believe I did. If not, I can review the video and make sure it's all up to your standards.
I am.
All right.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Let's beat this one to death.
Maybe just
Okay.
note for the record that there's no members of the public here, so open and close the public hearing.
Open and close the public hearing right now.
Okay.
Opening the public hearing, is there any member of the public who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll be closing the public comment portion of the public hearing.
All right.
And we are ready for the recommendation.
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending that the Board of Supervisors take the following action. Find that the proposed ordinance, adopt a resolution as amended, recommending that the Board of Supervisors take the following action. Find that the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 1744 is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines, and adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 1744 of the Calaveras County Code.
So moved. Second.
I'm sorry, who was the first? All in favor?
I second it.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
I think we have some other things on our agenda. Are there any commissioner reports?
You won't believe it, but I do.
All right, I'm ready.
No reports.
I'm getting a new hip next Wednesday, so I may well not be here. This is my titanium collection year, so I may not be here at the next meeting.
Thank you.
We'll make sure we'll schedule everything.
Yeah, right.
Anybody else before we hear from our leader? Peter, do you have something to report?
So I do have a few things that I'd like to just let you be aware of. You're probably all too aware that the board adopted the Cannabis Ordinance on Tuesday. Unless there is a referendum, significant signatures gathered to force a referendum, this will go into effect in 30 days. The board also adopted the same day the background check ordinance, as well as a fee resolution for both the application and the background check. The fees go into effect 60 days after that, so there's a provision in the ordinance, as you recall, that says we're not going to accept any applications until the fee is in place. So that means if everything moves forward, that it would become effective, or we would start collecting applications on December 21st. Merry Christmas. The board also authorized the establishment of a Department of Cannabis Control, but until staff is hired for that, it's falling on the planning department. We'll be updating our website as best as we can to have the adopted ordinance in place and some FAQs. There's a lot of questions. We've been inundated with calls in the last couple of days about, am I qualified, or where's the list of qualified applicants that I could buy the right to apply for? So we'll be dealing with that in the next couple of weeks and months. On a more positive note, I got a letter from HCD yesterday that said they certified our housing element. And on Tuesday, the board also authorized the filing of SB2 grant application. It's a non-competitive grant, so we're guaranteed, as long as we meet the criteria, to implement some of the housing element programs. One of those that's on the list is the consideration of the small rural owner-built housing provisions of the building code that provides some relief from some of the more stringent requirements. And so we'll be looking at that as one of those potentials. Some of the other things that were listed that were eligible was some of the community workshops and information gathering procedures of what can we do to help reduce costs and streamline housing production in the county. The final thing I have is I'm working right now on the draft findings for the EIR for the general plan. Been working with our outside counsel on that. We have a draft that just needs a little bit of touch up. The board has tentatively scheduled November 12th, I believe it is, for final adoption of the general plan. And so we'll be working diligently to get that ready for that hearing date. And we will then have a new general plan if all goes well. And then we can start implementation. So that's my report.
Fantastic.
Any questions?
No, that's
When would we be getting around to the actual zoning maps and that sort of thing?
I don't want to see that dark sky over there.
Well, the first thing I'll be doing is going back to the board with a request for some direction of priority setting. As you recall, there are a number of implementation measures, and there are priorities from different ones, and we'll let the board decide what that is. We've already started working on the zoning map update, because that's a huge task. One of the main questions will be whether or not we're going to start a comprehensive zoning ordinance revision, rewrite the whole thing, or we're going to take it in pieces. The former is a huge undertaking.
Yes.
The latter is complex because you have to make sure that you don't create inconsistencies. That's one of the problems that we have right now is over the years, all of these amendments we've done have created inconsistencies. And sometimes we come across something where the one part of the code says one thing and the other part says the exact opposite. So, but a comprehensive rewrite is a huge undertaking. I've been through it once before. And it's interesting, it's fun, but catch my breath first.
Yeah, it's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. And that's where the language really has to be precise. You can sort of get by with some fuzzy language in general plan policy, but when it's code, it's a whole different ballgame.
It's fantastic.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well, we're not there yet. You
Yeah.
can congratulate me in 2 weeks.
See it.
So hopefully on the 14th, if there's any general plan findings that need to be made, we'll be making them against the new general plan and not the old general plan. But in the meantime, I'm having staff prepare for both, just in case.
are we expecting items for the next meeting, 2 weeks from now?
Which would be the 12th.
Yeah.
Annette, do you remember? I'm sure we have something.
Yeah, we have some items.
Yeah.
Okay, great. With that, we're adjourned.
Okay.
Yay, thank you everyone for staying.
Now we have lunch, and we don't have to go back in an hour.
Now I'm going to run over to planning and ask my questions about other things.